Hello there. In the last 3 months, we have picked Bundesliga teams to support. We have witnessed sex dolls and cardboard cutouts in replacement of fans in stadiums, and we've exhausted watching Premier League years. But finally, a date has been set for the return of football in England. That's right, the Premier League is back on June the 17th, and in the absence of any other announcements, shall we say, I think that's reason enough to crack open the cans in celebration. I'm Andy Sixsmith. This is Football Matters. All of this coming up on tonight's programme. It's been 84 days since the ball was last kicked in the Premier League, but come June the 17th, it'll be back. Project Restart a success. We'll be looking ahead to the return of the top flight and the implications of it with BBC broadcaster Vicki Sparks. Further down the leagues, Morpeth won't be kicking a ball again this season, but they're working hard off the pitch already to prepare for next. We'll have a catch-up on that, but more importantly, the mental difficulties of coping with lockdown with their manager, Nick Gray. And charity free kicks, commemorative shirts, and a crowd fund that has to be seen to be believed. There'll be a comprehensive roundup of all of the rest of the news in North East football. And with schools opening right across England again today, we thought we'd adopt a back-to-school theme with our three very own wise old pundits. The man who, with an encyclopedic knowledge of North East football, would have excelled in history, but a goal for Leamington Middle School aside, probably flunked at PE, North East football writer Mark Carruthers. Conversely, a natural at sport and PE, probably captain of the football side, let's be honest, but who presumably spent most of his time outside the head teacher's office for his wind-up comments and poor timekeeping abilities, former Newcastle United defender Olivier Bernard. And last, but certainly by no means least, probably the type to be cracking open the cans round the back of the bike shed, revelling in the doubts over Newcastle's prospective takeover, Sunderland legend Darren Williams. Gents, is that fair? Do those sort of descriptions suit you all or not?
Not at all. Move on.
Don't know whether
You fail. Sorry.
Wow, we're off to a good start, aren't we? Really. Just out of interest, what all three did you excel at or absolutely hate in school?
For me, it was English literature and English language. Typically, so.
I can understand that.
all of it.
All of it.
just walking to school was a chore for me. It was just difficult. Just difficult.
I'm glad we just talk about football on this show rather than like being the purveyors of good exercise and good health and everything. That would be a great opening shout. But good to know. What did you excel at anything apart from English literature or anything like that?
P.
That's it, mate. Apart from a walking element.
Lunchtime.
Yeah, I was alright, to be fair.
I was always with you.
No, I was at that point where I was starting to swap with others and all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Give me your dinner, I give you my dessert. Give me your starter, I give you. You know what I mean? So I was quite good at that.
You were the wheeler dealer.
You can't say that.
I could see that, mate. I could totally see that in you, guaranteed. Mark, anything you excelled at?
History. To be fair, so you weren't too bad with that.
There you go.
I just really didn't want to give you any credit. To be fair, I was in the school team up until high school, but then everyone got a bit tall, and I kind of just stayed, at the height I am now, really.
You know what? Even for me, that is far too easy to make a comment on. So, considering you've poked fun at yourself for now, mate, we'll press on.
To be fair, I've got a great left foot, though, as Olly knows. So.
Very true.
He hasn't pinged one into your head, has he, Olly?
No, he's got a good left foot.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll take that. Move on. That'll do.
Yeah.
On the right hand side.
Cuts in on the left, right? Darren's got a bit of a sceptical look on his face right now, so we're definitely going to move on into the show. And before we actually get into the football, I just want to tell you guys, it might have caught your eye like it caught mine, but I'm going to show you something very, very quickly. And it was this story that came out over the weekend, and especially I think it was today actually. It came out on BBC, and it was about this former amateur footballer who woke up from a coma speaking fluent French. Now,
to be fair, that's what happened to Olly. Olly's actually from Walker. People don't realise this.
You know, I'm a Geordie lad, you know.
Well, that fits in perfectly with what I'm about to ask you. Olly, obviously, French and English, that's kind of your bag. Darren and Mark, are you fluent or can you speak, I think is a better question, any other languages or not?
We.
Mackery for one and Geordie for the other one.
I only manage English sometimes, so
Yeah.
you do a little bit of French as long as there's no follow-up questions.
Okay.
To be fair, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll start speaking a completely different language.
I've had that as well. I have that as well.
Or during lockdown, Darren, 2 o'clock in the afternoon as well.
Oh, yeah. Anytime during lockdown.
Yesterday I was a bit like that, to be honest.
I feel like there's a story developing here with Olly later on. So we'll get the show done and then we'll have a chat about that. Mark, we've heard Darren's French accent briefly. Have you got a French accent for us? Can you speak a bit of French?
No, I can speak French, but I'm not going to do it.
Oh, come on. Fun, isn't it?
Let's talk about football. We're here to talk about football. Come on.
Killjoy. All right, fine. We will move on. I tried. Just before we get into things, as ever, folks, a reminder on where to find us right across social media. Subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/Football Matters. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Footy Matters TV and give us a like on Facebook too while you're at it. You can watch this on YouTube or Facebook, or you can listen to the podcast on SoundCloud or iTunes if you're out for a walk or a run or a drive in these newly relaxed lockdown regulations. Let's get into the programme then. Let's forget the accents. Let's forget the drinking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and get straight into the football, like Mark says. And only one place to start tonight, because back on Monday, the 9th of March, Leicester City hammered Aston Villa 4-0. And precisely, none of us thought that that would be the last time a ball was kicked in the Premier League until June. But then, of course, the coronavirus pandemic lockdown hit. Sport was postponed. The rest, as they say, was history. But as of last week, it is announced that Premier League football will be returning on June the 17th. And as much as we've been pacified with the Bundesliga and Belarusian football over the last few weeks, it just wasn't quite the same, was it? So working as a broadcaster covering the Premier League, I can say I'm pretty happy about this one. And one other person who joins us right now is, I'm sure, just about as happy as I am with regards to the Premier League returning. It is, of course, BBC broadcaster and commentator Vicki Sparks. Vicki, great to see you. It's been a while, hasn't it? How has lockdown been for you? You've been keeping quite busy with a bit of a venture, haven't you?
Yeah, so I have been... Hello, everyone. First of all, thanks very much for having me on. Very glad to make my debut on Football Matters.
No.
So, yeah, I've been working on a writing project that I've been doing over the last 10 years or so, which has nothing to do with football. It's a kids novel that I've kind of written for 2 weeks every year, because that's the amount of time that I have off from football. And so this has actually been really, really fun to have 3 months to really focus on that. So I have missed football. I felt like a little kid when the announcement came through that the Premier League would be restarting later this month. And it's the sort of thing that I think when that announcement came, you know that you've missed it, but you're also just trying to get on with life and trying to make the most of the time that you have to do all these other things. And as soon as I saw that news, this little kid inside me just went, yes! And I realised how much emotionally I'd just been looking forward to it coming back. So, yeah, can't wait.
It's the Robin Van Persie of the broadcasting world, Vic, then in that case. The little kid inside of you, delighted at getting Premier League football back, but beautifully put, because I think we all felt like that when we got the announcement. But we'll come on to the players and coming back to playing in a second. But for us broadcasters, we'll presumably be a little bit rusty as well. Have you done any commentary practices? Have you done any pieces to camera in the mirror just in advance of the season kicking off again?
Do you know what? I've set a couple of days aside to get back into the swing of things. I think particularly when you didn't know when it was coming back, I think that was difficult to kind of cope with in terms of scheduling your time and when you don't have an end point to work to. I think that's a challenge. But yeah, as soon as we've got that date, I was like, right, let's look at the weeks that we've got and let's go back and watch through things, try and get into the swing of things. I think it is going to be such a challenge, particularly from a commentary perspective and even a reporting perspective, to do it without fans. I mean, obviously for the players, that's going to be a huge challenge as well. But as a commentator, you always use the noise of the crowd to convey the passion of a moment. And when you don't have that, that is really challenging to work out, okay, how are you going to convey the excitement of this? How are you going to picture something in the audience's mind without being able to use the crowd? Because really, as a commentator, it's you and the supporters together, whether that's a roar, whether that's a hush because the away team have scored and you hear this tiny voice in the microphone over the other side of the stand of the small pocket of away fans celebrating wildly, and that contrast in noise. I think from a commentator's perspective, we are going to realise very quickly just how much we subconsciously rely on that, and I think it will change the discipline.
So just Andy's been using Football Matters to prepare, but as you can see, he's very rusty.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. I was just going to say I've just been using my mirror and I'm bad enough in front of the mirror, so at least I'm bad across both formats, I suppose. We've taught the broadcasters, Vic. Let's get into Project Restart. Obviously, you've already said about how excited you are about Premier League returning, but the key word was always going to be safety, wasn't it? Yeah. And we've seen towards the end of last week, the latest round of tests, no positives from, I think it was 1,130 tests it was. A list of safety protocols set out too. This is as safe as an environment now as you're going to get, isn't it, with regards to the return of Premier League football?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that's a really important point, that the Premier League have always emphasised that it will be safety first. And I think you have to put this into the wider context as well of what the government are now telling people across all industries in this country, is that we are gradually ramping up the advice for people to work from home if they can, but if they can't, then go back to work. And yes, there is a debate there to be had about social distancing at work, and obviously that's something that the Premier League have done with the individual training, and then coming back to contact training obviously changes that slightly, but that has been done in line with government advice. And I think it's interesting that when we saw the Premier League stop back in mid-March, that was a decision that the Premier League actually took before the government at that point, when the Premier League was called off that weekend, was still saying it is okay for the sporting events to go ahead. And the Premier League actually took the decision to say, after Mikel Arteta's positive test for coronavirus, actually, no, we don't think that we are going to go ahead as an organisation. And this time, it's the government who have very much led the direction that the Premier League will go in. So having acted before the government acted in the first place, I think that they have acted in tandem with the government, and obviously in conversation with the relevant departments. But I think you're right. If football is to come back, then it will not be able to be made any more safe than the environment that they are bringing it back in. And of course, we've seen the staggered return as well.
Yeah, and just one last note on the actual Premier League as a body. You say rightly about the fact that they've been following the government and following the government's lead on it, but is it that patience, do you think, rather than rushing straight back into it, that has allowed them to reach the right decision and set June the 17th as the return date?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's interesting as well, there was a very interesting front page from L'Équipe the other day in France, because France, of course, the government, rather than the French football authorities, have said pretty early on in the pandemic that there will be no sport, including behind closed doors, until September. And L'Équipe ran quite a critical front page last week when the Premier League confirmed this return date, saying, well, it's come back in Germany, La Liga's got a date, the Premier League's got a date. Did we act too quickly? Now, again, that was a decision that the French government made rather than the French footballing authorities. Yeah. But I think what the Premier League have done well is that they have always said, number one is safety. And they have discussed the options. They discussed curtailing the season. They discussed restarting the season. And it's always been, the aim is to restart it, but we won't do that until we feel that it's safe. And I think by holding back on officially stating targets, that again just allowed them to see how the situation was developing. Because I think all of us in all walks of life have been taken by surprise at how quickly things can change in the midst of something that none of us have experienced in our lifetimes. And I think they were wise in saying, look, we're just going to take it 1 week at a time. We're going to look at the advice. We're going to talk to the government, and we're going to make decisions as we go.
It's an interesting one, actually. Just to bring Olly in on that, on the French League. can you see in any way, shape or form, excuse me, a decision being reversed there, Olly, bearing in mind what's happening in Spain, Germany, England now coming back in? Is that decision going to remain as it is, or do you think that the calls are going to grow so far that they may have to think about reversing that?
No, I think it's done because, they have done promotion and relegation already. They know the champion. So things have been put into place for the season to finish. So I'll be very, very surprised if they reverse any decision because, like I said, everything's sorted.
Sure. Well, just going back to the Premier League and focusing on that, it seems obviously like most clubs all clubs are in agreement. It was unanimous. The players less so. One player in particular has flagged up concerns. Tyrone Mings, I'm just going to share it now, saying to the Daily Mail, I think it was, that the decision is financially driven. Vicki, how would you react to that? Of course, finance is going to play a part, but isn't it just about the integrity of finishing the season with regards to the title, with regards to European qualification and relegation as well?
I think there are a lot of factors, as you say, at play. I think the most important thing for me reading Tyrone Mings' comments is that players in this situation feel comfortable in expressing any concerns that they have to their clubs. And that relationship between employee and employer on a personal level and on a club level is so important. And I do think we've seen that reflected. You have Troy Deeney, of course, at Watford, not wanting to go back to training initially, N'Golo Conte at Chelsea. And again, those decisions were made with the full support of the clubs. And I think what's a really key point here is that players continuing to go forward as contact training steps up, as matches come back, if it is safe to do so on June the 17th, that players feel comfortable in expressing any concerns that they have with their club, because we know that everybody's personal circumstances are different. We know that some people might have health concerns, or they might have a vulnerable family member. And I think that is a really key point, that players should feel comfortable in talking to their clubs and expressing in these concerns. And I think we have seen evidence of that so far, particularly in the examples of Troy Deeney and N'Golo Conte. And I think going forward, that's very important for that to happen.
Yeah. And great that, I think we said it last week as well, in regards to Troy Deeney in particular, and the likes of Danny Rose and N'Golo Kante as well, that they felt that it's been possible for them to come out and actually speak as well, which is really, really important in itself. Let's leave the politics of it behind for a second, because God knows we've talked enough about politics in the last few weeks in particular. Let's focus on the football. I love saying that, by the way, after a few months. The games are going to be coming thick and fast, aren't they? How busy, how difficult a period will this be? Not just for the players who are having to play every few days, but for broadcasters as well. Not that I'm personally complaining at all.
Well, from a broadcaster perspective, I was thinking about this the other day. I think this is absolutely brilliant, because we were going to have the Euros, which was then going to be followed by the Olympics, which obviously would have had Team GB women from a football perspective. And that was going to be such an amazing footballing summer. And I think actually the fact that the Premier League is essentially starting around the same time that the Euros would have been starting, and that the aim is to get it completed in 5 weeks. Yeah. For me, and I'm sure fans will see this as well, I'm just approaching it as a tournament. During the Euros, we would have had, 3 matches a day in the group stages, bang, 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 and then you go on to other things. And I think almost the fact that just through circumstances, the Premier League will just about squeeze itself into this 5-week period. I think if we see it as a replacement for the Euros, and I think a lot of people will perceive it in that way from a fan's perspective, I think that'll be really exciting. I mean, I'm just going to rely on adrenaline, but I'm so buzzing for it. Obviously, from a player's perspective, guys, that is clearly very different because of the physical demands, and going from no football, and the longest break that any of these players will ever have had in their careers without football, without proper pre-season training. It is going to be a challenge.
Yeah. Olly, Darren, how would you fancy that after such a long time out, after such a minimum pre-season, shall we call it again? How would you like to be thrust back into it come June the 17th?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind. I mean, obviously not this moment in time, because I've been drinking for 10 weeks. No, I mean, you want to get back into it, don't you? I mean, let's be honest. It's like you said, like Vicki said there, it's a long time out of football. And players won't be used to it, and will we see, will we see a lot of injuries? Will we see a lot of fatigue? We'll probably watch. To be fair, we'll probably watch a couple of bad games in a sense, because players will be that tired, and that run down from the demands of what they have to do. So potentially, like we've always said, you couldn't predict the season, and this is going to be something completely different, because teams could underachieve, on what they maybe would have done if the league had continued on.
Just on that point, actually, to bring you back in, Vic, do you think that such a tight schedule, it almost favours the bigger teams with the bigger squads, with the players that are more used to playing, European football in midweek, international fixtures as well, rarely getting a break? Does it now favour the bigger teams, the top 6, the top 10?
I think you could certainly argue that. I think the caveat to that is that there are only 9 or 10, if you have a game in hand, matches left. So I think the mental and the physical focus, if, as Darren says, you can almost get over those first couple of weeks and get the players back to fitness and avoid injuries in that period, which I think is going to be the highest risk period for players, then I think, because it is such a short period of time, if you do that over a long period of time, of course that's going to be the issue. But again, I talk about adrenaline for broadcasters, it's going to be like that for players. Although I think the interesting thing will be how the lack of fans in the stadiums affects that adrenaline for players as well. I know Pat Nevin has spoken about that. It's not just the atmosphere and the home crowd at key moments in the match, it's your physical levels throughout the match without a crowd there. That adrenaline that you rely on and that you're so used to on a match day for 90 minutes, not just in that key final few minutes when you're throwing yourselves forward trying to get an equaliser or whatever, is not going to be there. And it's going to be interesting to see how players cope with that as well.
It'd be all right. Just chuck a few sex dolls like they did in Korea, or chuck a few cardboard cutouts in it.
Hashtag awkward.
We've been through the sex doll story last week or 2 weeks ago, and I don't really want to revisit that ever again, to be honest with you. No, Darren, we're not going back to that, mate. Not a chance. There were too many euphemisms flying around for my liking. Anyway, just on the stadiums, a lot of talk about these neutral venues for certain games, for the bigger games. I couldn't help, as a lad from the north, look at that and think, hang on a minute, these are all games involving northern teams. What's your take on that one? Obviously, Liverpool going for the title, Manchester City, arguably one of the bigger games involving them, but it's all involving northern teams, Vic. What's your kind of take on that?
Well, from my understanding, the requests around neutral venues are very much down to the local police forces. And so I think we have to be guided by that. I think another interesting point that was raised is that even if fans don't actually turn up, the question is, do you still have to police in the numbers that you are predicting that they will turn up in? And so there are two caveats there. One is, will the fans turn up in numbers, which could create a problem? But the second is actually, is it safe to have a huge number of police officers all together, even if nobody ended up turning up anyway? How do you deal with that with social distancing? How do you keep the police forces safe? So I think it's clearly something that the Premier League would like to avoid where possible, and I think that's a good thing. But I think if there are concerns over public health, again, we go back to the safety message and say, we've got to put that first, and we've got to listen to the advice of individual police forces in individual areas. Obviously, it would be a shame for the players, but again, you have to ask, I totally understand the concern over home advantage, but this is home advantage in an empty stadium, and that is going to be hugely diminished regardless of whether you're playing at home or not, because you have no supporters there, and that is a real shame for clubs who were really looking to this run at the end of the season and saying, right, we've got some big home games coming up. That will be impacted, and even though we are restarting, even though we're making it as safe as possible, it is not going to be the same, and it will not play out the same as it would have done if we'd been able to continue the season under normal circumstances. And that is just a consequence of the situation we find ourselves in. And I think that the question is, are we doing everything we can to finish it in the best way and the safest way possible?
And I suppose we've already seen the negative impact almost of home advantage in the Bundesliga. I think the conversion rate or the success rate for home teams is dreadful over there. But be interested to see whether that's the case when the Premier League returns. Just before we let you go, Vicky, obviously we can't talk Premier League in the North East and not talk about Newcastle United. You will be relieved to know we are not going to be talking about the takeover. Olly, it's not happening tomorrow, no?
For me, it should. For me, it should. Whether it's going to happen, I'm not entirely sure. But I know it's important that it happens soon. Vic, any idea?
I can't give you any inside information, I'm afraid. I do apologise.
Well, Vicky,
That's fine.
That's the last we're talking about the takeover on this show. I promise myself, not this week. Just with Newcastle on the pitch, Vicky, they are still technically maybe in a relegation battle. I know they're a little bit higher up, but they should have enough to stay up, regardless.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you would think so. I mean, again, we have to wait and see just how the strange scenarios and circumstances will affect everybody. But no, I think without wanting to tempt fate, I feel that the job is almost done. Obviously, you look at a 3-month break and you don't know how that's going to affect every team, not just Newcastle United. But you would think, yes, based on this season so far and based on the form that they managed to pull together through the season, then yes, you would think that this would be a case of finish off the season, try and get safe as quickly as possible, and then fingers crossed, focus on the FA Cup. Focus on the FA Cup.
Lead us perfectly onto it, Vic, like I knew you would do, because it isn't just the Premier League they've got to look at. It is the FA Cup. This is typical Newcastle. This is typical North East team, by the way. Reach an FA Cup quarter-final, home advantage, because Manchester City don't like playing at St James's recently, and then obviously lockdown hits, and Newcastle don't get the advantage of a home tie necessarily. How big an impact is that going to have on this one? Because Manchester City were always going to be favourites coming into this one. But like I say, the record, the vociferous home crowd, especially at 5:30 on a Saturday evening, it would have done wonders for Newcastle, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no getting away from it, Andy. You're totally right. It's a huge blow. It's a huge blow. But I think during lockdown, one of the biggest concerns was, will the FA Cup even be finished? And obviously the Premier League people were looking at that first, and people were questioning, well, will the FA Cup have to go? I mean, you would have thought that would have been unthinkable given the fact that we're at the quarter-final stage. But I think so. Firstly, the relief that for Newcastle fans that the FA Cup will be going ahead. And I still feel, yes, the home advantage, as we said, is the blow, but it's a one-off match. It was always going to be a one-off match. It is still a one-off match. And the focus from those players and from Steve Bruce will be just as good as it would have been at a full St James's Park. That they are so desperate for this. He has done what he said he would. He has taken the cups seriously, and they have got to the quarter-final. And I think the hunger put on hold for 3 months, that in itself won't have been damaged. That will only have been intensified by the fact that they have had to wait so long for this huge occasion. And it is a huge occasion. It's a massive occasion for Newcastle United, and they will be hopeful that they can just focus on it as that one-off game, as they would have done anyway, and see what happens.
See what happens indeed. We can only hope, but it would just be like Newcastle to make it to Wembley and then have to play in front of no crowd whatsoever. So we will see what happens with regards to that. Just before we let you go, Vic, one final one. We've concentrated on this season and finishing it off, and I'm sure there's little to no focus on what happens next. But just speaking speculatively, when would you even see next season starting? Would you see it as a very, very short turnaround time pre-season and straight in the next season? Would you see them being given a month off of the transfer window to come in? How, in your view, would you see them playing that out?
Well, I understand that the aim, if all goes as planned, is to finish the Premier League around the 25th of July. And then the possibility would be to start the next season at the end of August, the start of September. But again, I think if there's anything that has really taught us something over this pandemic is you just can't tell what is going to happen from week to week. And so I think that tentative plan to me makes sense. The players have already had 3 months off. They will need some time off, A, because of the intense schedule of the return of the Premier League, and B, just mentally. I think even if physically you could go straight into another season, I think you do need, even if it's a couple of weeks, a mental break just to switch off and say, right, that season's gone, deal with the disappointment, deal with the elation, whatever it might be that comes the way of your football team, and then let's get started for next season. But it won't be a long one. I can't see there being long pre-season schedules. Almost you wonder whether they'd almost see it as an international break with no international matches perhaps, and have that sort of time off, and then keep the fitness levels, come back and go into the next season. But it's just very much see how you go, and then you have questions over, well, how will that season progress? We just don't know, do we? And I think the priority rightly is on finishing this season. I think it's absolutely the right decision to try and finish this season rather than saying, well, we'll just leave it and focus on starting the next season. Mainly because of that reason. We just don't know what is going to happen in 2, 3, 4 months' time. We know what we have with the time now. We know as things stands where we are with this pandemic in this country. And so let's use the window of opportunity that we have, get the season finished, and then everyone can take a breath and plan. Because planning something that is going to stretch over 9 months at the moment is going to be a monumental task when you just don't have the information to know what that 9 months is going to look like.
Maybe we should just sit back and celebrate the fact that we are going to have Premier League football back on our screens in a couple of weeks' time, and 4 matches on the BBC as well, which is tremendous. First time since 1988. So celebrations all round. Celebrations certainly for you, Vicki, because that's the end of your debut on Football Matters. It certainly won't be the last time that we'll see you on here if you haven't been traumatised in the last 25 years.
Oh, it's been very, very fun. Top pro, Andy.
No one ever said that around Olly and Darren before. So.
I thought I had to balance out Mark's comment earlier. So, that's just typical BBC coming in there.
Don't really have to.
I'll pay you later, Vic. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Vicki, thank you so much. Best of luck with the book as well. Keep writing. And,
thank you very much.
We'll catch up soon.
Yeah, Vic.
Catch you soon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. That is Vicki Sparks, of course, BBC broadcaster. Guys, we're a little bit pushed for time tonight, but I just want to kind of touch back on one point, and that was these comments coming from Tyrone Mings. It's a unanimous club decision to come back, for the Premier League to come back, but there are clearly some players who are not happy. We mentioned the PFA last week. How much of a bigger role now do the PFA have to play? The fact that there is still a little bit of dissent clearly amongst the players.
Well, I think that represent the players, don't they? So, we've said obviously players are happy to speak out and happy to say, whether they're happy to go ahead or not. But I think at some point, the PFA need to step in and represent these players. I say it's a tough thing. Everyone has a difference of opinion. And I think whether you want to play or you don't want to play, you should be able to do that.
Olly, for you?
Yeah, it's for me. We said it last week. It's a difficult one because we know why clubs want to start and finish the season, and it's not only to decide who's going to win it and who's going to get relegated. Yeah. I think there's a big impact on the financial state of clubs. The sooner it starts, the better it is, and that's for me why clubs said yes, let's start. Got nothing to do with how the players feel, and the fact that they're saying that if players don't want to play, then that's fine. Is that really showing me that players are deciders, and they will play with reserve player if they have to, because obviously. We know how financially it's important for the football to restart again. So I'm a bit. I love my football. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's let's try to rush it. Let's finish with it, and let's not lose our financial backing in that sense. So difficult, yeah.
It is difficult. It is.
Even though when you for players who are going to go into who are in pre-season right now, who's going to start in 2-3 weeks. Yeah. There's got to be a lot of fatigue. Normally in pre-season you play a couple of games beforehand. Yeah. Probably not as intensive as it should be, but you do kind of roll the team up to the start of the season, so you get out 4, 5, 6 games beforehand, and you're not allowed now. So you can feel like there's going to be a lot of fatigue, injuries, and playing with no fan again. It's a massive problem for me. So that combined, I don't think it's going to look great, but it has to be done.
And they'll probably have the same problems lower down the pyramid as well, because obviously the Premier League is back. But moving on to our next topic, as expected, the Championship quickly followed suit. That provisionally set to return on the 20th of June. 108 matches plus playoffs yet to be played in the Championship. For Leagues 1 and Leagues 2, we'll come on to them in a second. Still no decision made, just more meetings, seemingly. Just quickly on the Championship, boys, how cramped a schedule is that going to be? They're trying to complete it, just to put that into consideration, by between the 25th and the 30th of July, apparently. Mark, that schedule is ridiculous, isn't it, for the Championship?
It is, but I think it was always going to be a case of that the Championship were going to be guided by the Premier League. They were just waiting for the Premier League to make a decision. And they will try and fit their schedule as close to the Premier League one as possible. So, yes, it's going to be tough. We shouldn't forget the Championship is already a mentally and physically draining league. You know, you don't really get a midweek off during the season. It's constant Saturday, Tuesday, or Saturday, Wednesday. Yep. So I think the players will be used to it. But I think Olly makes a good point that, you know, there are no pre-season friendlies being played, so or none arranged by the sounds of it. So they are going to go straight into the high intensity of a first game of the season again. Really, I just think you could see a lot of muscle injuries because of the muscle fatigue that people will experience, that players will experience. So it's going to be a real challenge, and it's understandable that there's a lot of hesitancy from players, not just because of the epidemic, but because of they will become more prone to injury, I think.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to see. And I think it's interesting, the Championship as well, because we've kind of seen two different sides, one side agreeing, one side disagreeing. The ones disagreeing, interestingly enough, QPR. I'm just going to share a screenshot there of a story that's come out today. And QPR, well, it's quite clear what they've said. Obviously, they're not happy. They've claimed that the EFL haven't consulted many clubs. They're appalled, vehemently oppose the decision. Whereas on the other side of things, you have Jonathan Woodgate and Middlesbrough, who welcome the decision. Is this a case of the EFL simply cannot win? Or is there a problem there, guys?
I think right the way through the leagues has been a real issue with a lack of leadership from the authorities. I think one thing I would say, the Premier League seem to have done all right with it. They've kind of been guided by the clubs, which we haven't seen further down the pyramid, as we know. We've discussed that at length. So I think a lack of communication seems to be a common message, ironically, coming out from clubs, that there's that the communication has been great, that players haven't been consulted. I think that's poor. If I was a player, I'd be almost insulted by that.
Yeah. Whereas obviously can't wait to get back into it. Darren, Olly, where do you kind of stand on that with regards to the Championship first?
It's one hell of a demanding league anyway, like Mark said. You know what I mean? Like, at the best of times, and to go just through all them games in such a short space of time, you've got to be very, very confident in your squad to get through all them games. Because I'm not being funny, obviously as former players, we know the demands of obviously games, in the Championship or in League One or in the Premiership, or wherever you play, there's massive demands, but there's no more demanding than that Championship. It is absolutely shocker. You don't seem to rest really, within the season in general. And for me, some people obviously want to finish the season because they want to try and finish on a high, and see the season out, and then you'll get other teams that clearly don't want to see the season out because they're not not 100% sure about obviously the situation and putting everyone back together again, and B, they're maybe worrying whether they get relegated or not.
Yeah, it's big consultations. At least though, like I think Mark, you said it there, the Premier League obviously have been quite steadfast. They've been patient. I know Vicki alluded to it as well. The Championship have now made a decision. Leagues 1, League 2, still awaiting a decision. The only announcement coming out seemingly is there's another meeting, where presumably there'll be an announcement saying that there's another meeting after that. That must be deeply frustrating for clubs in Leagues 1 and 2, surely, to see the Premier League decided, the Championship now decided, but they're still having to wait on how to finish their season.
Could there be an issue in League 1, though, that when you look at the Championship, a lot of clubs are, I'm not going to say cash rich, but there's a bit of money in there.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas in League 1, there are a lot of clubs, particularly the bottom end of the division, who don't have a lot of money, so they can't afford to pay for the testing. So I do wonder if the financial aspect of coming back has been looked at. It's difficult. You imagine clubs like, I'm trying to think of who now, sort of your Morecambs and clubs in League 2 won't be able to afford to pay. The amount it costs to test your whole squad and all your officials. Yeah, I do wonder if that's been taken into account. What I would say, they do need to make a decision quickly because it's not helping anyone. This lack of clarity and this kicking the can down the road in terms of making a decision. It has to be done. It has to be done soon, because otherwise there's only one decision they're going to be left to make, which is that we're done, because it's going to be too late.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It is difficult for club who don't have the financial backing like the Premier League and the Championship, because obviously they've got to pay for everything. You know, when your fans are giving you most of that revenue. And playing closed door, that means there's no income coming, but they still are going. Will be so it is difficult for League One and League Two. Unless you have the money, you wouldn't want to restart the season without your fans, because they are your breadwinner.
Certainly a difficult period for them. Well, let's move on to our next guest then, because while the EFL decides on the fate of Leagues 1 and League 2, the lower league pyramid, of course, has already been declared null and void. Steps 3 to 7 weeks ago, we covered it comprehensively on this very programme. One side affected up here in the northeast were Morpeth Town. They were well placed with games in hand for promotion, but not opposed to the eventual decision to finish the season. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined right now by a man who's, well, he's no stranger, or a ceiling that's no stranger to this programme. There he is. He was just waiting the call, wasn't it? As if by magic, it's like we orchestrated that introduction for him. It is, of course, Morpeth Town manager and Highwayman legend, Nick Gray. Nick, delighted to have you back on Football Matters after what it seems, well, it is years, obviously, but it seems even longer. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Good, enjoying the sun.
Top man. Isn't everyone? Yeah. Delightful. It's almost like it's not the northeast of England. We're going to come on to, our kind of main topic with you in a second, but just talking football for the opening couple of questions. Morpeth obviously weren't necessarily opposed to the decision. What was kind of your initial reaction to that decision, and obviously seeing other clubs like South Shields threaten legal action against it?
First thought was disappointment. I think every club looks at themselves first of all and see where they were, and I thought we were in a good position. But then for me, I keep on saying this virus is like a war, go to war. You never see it coming. You don't know when it's going to finish. So, I see people saying we should continue, but I think it's totally different from full-time footballers than part-time footballers, because when my lads come back to play football, they'll want to have family holidays, they'll want to earn money at work, go back to work. Work won't give them the time off to go midweek games. So I think it's a bit different from part-time football to full-time football. So, and you forget these 92 games that's coming into the Sky. I personally think if it wasn't for every game being televised, I don't think we would continue the Premier League personally. So it's obviously got to do with financial there. And I think that's why I've got locked down probably a little bit earlier, I thought, because of trying to get the economy back and running. But we are where we are, and as I say, for me it was like a war. You couldn't predict it. Just want to make sure everyone's safe, and we just want to make sure everyone gets through it. And when we do, you do, but you don't know when it's going to happen. You haven't got a clue when the season's going to start, when pre-season's going to start. So everyone's up in the open, but
at least you're using the time very, very productively over at Morpeth, because I think every single time I go online, I see a new signing or I see a new contract being signed at Morpeth. You've done some really, really good business in preparation already for next season, haven't you?
Well, I thought we were finishing the season strong, and we had a cracking squad. Really delighted with the squad. There's some players out of contract at the end of the season. The club are very good and grateful to continue helping the players to the end of the season, which was unbelievable from the club in Kent. And I was confident that a lot of the players would stay. Unfortunately, I haven't had anyone leave. Such as we brought in Andrew Johnson, who was a great addition, and we keep on saying this. And I think you've always got to be on the lookout to improve the club, whether it be players, whether it be management. You've always just got to keep on rotating and go further forward with the club, and that's what Morpeth want to do as a club, because I generally think they can get the Conference North, possibly the Conference, but it depends how far the club, what ambition they've got, what to do. And we're in a good place at the minute, but we're delighted with the squad we've got there, and the club is moving forward on and off the pitch. As I say, you've got to keep on the wheels rotating for me.
Certainly a fantastic squad that you've got there, and like I say, a lot of business done already. We don't know, obviously, when the next season will be started. All the focus is currently on finishing this one in the upper echelons of the game in England. But can Morpeth Town fans expect any more movement in and any more big names coming into Crack Park or not?
I don't know. The honest answer.
Sitting on the fence, mate. You've changed.
No, it's a case. Listen, we're really happy with the squad, but if someone came along and you think we'll improve the squad, you kind of say no to it. For me personally, you've got to, like I say, as I says, if there's someone that's going to improve the squad, whether it be, like I say, on and off the pitch, you want to do that. You want to progress the club. Some players might have one to there who said they're committed, might not be able to. They might have to say that the work won't give them any time off midweek. Their jobs might change. Some people might lose their jobs, unfortunately. They might have to go work abroad or work away. So you've just got to be, well, if he leaves, we can bring this player in. If he leaves, we can bring this player in. Some players might not be happy with their position at the club themselves, so they might want to move on. But you don't know, as I says, and we don't know when pre-season. We've just planned, we've got the pre-season friendlies. We usually start at the end of June, but I've just looked at the guidelines there and it's saying, including the coach, you can coach 6 people at social distancing as well, you know. So, and I think that will happen until probably the end of June, the end of this month at least. So we just have to wait and see and just be prepared for when that time comes that we can move on.
It's interesting developments there. I wish I could say, Nick, that we obviously have got you on the programme to talk exclusively Morpeth and exclusively football, but we're going to move on now to, let's be honest, I know we're talking on a football programme, but a much, much bigger topic than football, a much bigger topic than sport, and that is mental health, because I need to kind of ask you how you have been mentally in this lockdown period, about how you've dealt with it in the last 3 months or so.
Well, I'm not going to hide from it. I mean, I'm a person who has always been busy 7 days a week with me work commitments and what I have in my life. So I was used to being out of the house from 7:30 till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. So, you know, I was always out and about.
Yeah.
And this was obviously a shock to everyone, and you had to, you know, with work, we were out at Park View, the stoppers, the kids going in there, and we still do a little bit now. But it was really difficult. I've got to say that it's something that I've never crossed. It's got to say that it's something that I was. It surprises a lot. I'm probably ashamed to say the ignorance a little bit about mental health, because I'm thinking maybe it might be someone else's problem. Maybe it wouldn't happen to me. But I've got to say it has. I've struggled in days. I've been in touch, and players have been back in touch with me, and wished as well, and there's other people as well as players, and I know Mark has as well. And Mark, you know, we've had conversations there, and it's been really tough at times. And you know, it's something that, like I say, I'm probably a little bit ashamed of the ignorance about, thinking where it's, you know, it won't happen to me, or it won't. Can people really have it? And I think, you know, it's out there, and I've just come to realise, you know, trying to keep myself occupied. I've been exercising a lot. I've been contacting people still a lot, and you just, I think, for me, what's kept us going is my mindset is just taking the little things for granted, like a hug, like a cuddle, like going for a pint at the bar with your pals, anything, going to shake hands with someone, going to watch a football at your local Whitney Beer and go and watch those Snow Shields, all these little things that you just take for granted. Your family, not being able to see them, my 2 sons don't live with us, you know. These things you cannot see them. I had 2 young nieces today, twins, you know, so my nieces had twins today, so can't see her and won't be able to see them for a little bit. And it's been a bit surreal, but it's made us a better person. And I'm proud to say that I opened up to people, which maybe I didn't, maybe because I've had jobs of responsibility where I've probably been classed as a leader or a person to look up to, or a person to answerable. It has been difficult, but I'm not on my own, and I think speaking about it probably makes it easier for me, and it might make it easier for someone else.
When you say, without delving too deep into it, Nick, of course, answer in whatever way you feel most comfortable, but when you say it's been tough, it's been difficult, how do you mean? What's been going through your head with regards to these moments where you found it really, really tough?
Haven't been able to speak, haven't been able to talk, just been looking at the 4 walls, looking at what's going to happen tomorrow. Kind of see, I wouldn't say I've had any suicidal thoughts. I haven't had anything like that. I'm fortunate to have good family and people around us. And, you know, it's just been, I know I'm a person that's always keep your mind occupied. And when you're not, I haven't been myself personally, when I'm like that, when I'm feeling down, and I just look at myself, how lucky I still am, how there's a lot more people worse off. There's a lot of people lost their lives at this time of the year, and it's something that, you know, and I just think it's trying to keep my eye occupied has been the hardest thing, but I've been having to do it. I've never exercised as much as I have done. I've been out and about. I've done so much walking, been on my bike. That's helped us mentally, and I just think it's, like I say, I'm probably a little bit ashamed of my ignorance, thinking someone else's problem, someone else's aching. Like, can there really be that much out there? And it's real in the world, and I think the more people talk about it, I think the more easier it comes, and it's not you know, it's something out there where we all need to help each other. And through these difficult times, a lot of people have to help other people to get through it, and talking is the best way to do it.
I was going to say, because I know obviously, Mark, with the work that you do as an ambassador of If You Care Share, absolutely wonderful organisation. In football in particular, Nick, which is seen as, you know, a macho sport, it's seen as very, very quite individualistic in ways. You know, it's very, very driven, and any sign of perceived weakness mentally gets pounced upon sometimes. How difficult has it been for you to kind of open up after years of, you know, not really talking about that kind of thing?
It has been difficult. I think the biggest thing for me is something that I thought I'd never struggle with. I really did. You know, if you speak, anyone who speaks, I'll speak my mind and how it is with me, whether it upsets people, whether they like what I say. That's the way I am, you know.
We know.
But I just think, for me, it's matured us. It's made us realise that, you know, there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot that we need to sit back and appreciate. And there's the little things that you appreciate, and just don't be alone out there. Don't be on your own, because there's always someone out there who will help you, who stand, you know. And even if someone's talking rubbish to you, you know, that's someone that is coming back here. At least it's have a conversation.
On this programme, mate, that happens an awful lot on this programme.
I'm a person, like I say, who's buoyant, bubbly, has a laugh, loves going, you know, holidays, whatever, loves life to the full. But this really been a wake-up call, shall I say, to myself, where it's something that I never thought I would. And it has been difficult, but as I say, it's just made us appreciate life more, and I feel better for it, for coming through. And now, like I say, I wake up every morning now, I'm looking forward to the day and thinking it's like a challenge to get through things. And don't get us wrong, there's some days I wake up and just want to stay in bed, but they're very few and far between. And it's, as I speak, I'm shaking a bit now, but I just keep on thinking I've got a lot of positives in my life, more positive than negatives, and, you know, and it's probably made us want to help other people in worse situations than me, and there's a lot more on that, and I just want to feel that some people may think I wasn't maybe approachable to speak to, but I feel as though I'm a different type of person now to speak and be emotionally more aware of things in life.
I was going to say there are so many people out there that, you know, I think the phrase that I always kind of use when it comes down to mental health, there are thousands upon thousands of people fighting a fight that you're not aware of by just looking at them, and obviously yourself included in this sense. To those kind of thousands of people who haven't had the courage like yourself tonight to come out and talk about it openly, to talk through their problems, what would you say to those people, whether they were involved with football or not?
I think they've always got to be open. I think it's people try and think that they feel daft or feel ashamed or they feel as though they're on their own. And I think also people around them, close to them, are important as well, because they can see a difference, they can help, and no one's going to speak in front of loads of people. But it just, if you know someone close, you can probably see the signs a little bit, and you're just important as a good friend to help them. And like I say, I've had friends of me, like, you know, who players who I've thought I haven't got on with, I've got on with, and they've asked me how I was, and I've been a little bit taken by their support, you know. And it's helped us through it, thinking, wow, I never thought he'd be this type of person to me, helping us through it. And I just think you just hope that you speak up and you open your body up, open your mind up before something tragic happens. Like I say, I've never ever been suicidal thoughts, never been there, but I have had days when I've just said F to the world, you know. But as I say, what keeps me going is activity, speaking, and also, like I say, I think it's made us a different, better person, because it's something, like I say, I wouldn't say I was above it, but I didn't think I would come across it, and now it's like, wow, sort of thing, but just there's always someone out there for someone else, and we've always got to be stick together and help each other as you can, and even if you see someone talking rubbish to you, that might be someone talking rubbish to you, and that gets you over the little hump, you know.
But most importantly for you, Nick, as it stands now, you know, you've kind of gotten over the trough, and you know you're heading up again. Are you? What's regards to your situation now?
Well, we work. We've always worked at the football academy in Chester Street, Parkview. That's never stopped. The kids have stopped, but we've always been having Zoom calls 4 times a week. So we've always been active on that one. That's kept us out there. Morpeth, as I say, Morpeth. I want the best for Morpeth. And you know, sometimes what you think's the best, I just want to make the best for the club. And sometimes has to be changed there. Whether it be players, like whether it be management, whether it be people behind the scenes, you know, you just always want to keep helping and moving on. And I'm in a place now that I'm a bit more relaxed in life. I'm a bit more appreciative in life, and not worried about those things. As I say, like I say, there's a lot of people worse off in life, and I just think you get one life. It's not a rehearsal. Make the most of it, but please don't leave anything behind. Make sure that if you have this tough time, go and ask someone for help. Go and ask them to just, you know, go and have a little walk. You know what I mean? But not able to, you know, my mother lives around, she's been stuck in a home for nearly 12 weeks. Seeing that, you know, it's them little things. Appreciate them, because they're never going to be there forever. But you should be on your own, because there's times, like I say, I've had to get over these little things, but from what I know from the people around us, they'll always help us through, and I appreciate that.
Well, I'm delighted they have, Nick. And from all of us, obviously, on here in Football Matters, you know, we're always available for you to talk to as and when you might need. And that goes, I'm sure, for anyone watching this right now. You know, there are so many people, like we said, that are going through things, whether it be during this lockdown or just in general when life returns to some form of normality. And like you've said there, Nick, talking about it sounds so simple, but it's such a simple solution for it, rather than keeping it to yourself, keeping hidden, and letting it escalate to a position where you can't do anything about it after that. So listen, Nick, I can't put into words just how impressed, how pleased I am that you decided to come onto the programme tonight and talk about your own experience. It is hugely important. And I think you said it to me before we started recording tonight, but if it can change just one person and one person's outlook, then you'll have done your job tonight. And I can imagine that it'll have changed quite a fair few people's outlooks. So thank you very, very much for that. We really appreciate it. And most importantly, you know, let's get back to football shortly, and let's get back onto Morpeth Town, and hopefully, you know, we can look forward to next season and see Morpeth flying high again.
We don't know when the season's going to start. It's unfortunate we don't. I mean, I've heard that the NPL might split into two halves. There might be North there. There might be 11 Northerners teams against playing a different league to the 11 Southerners teams. Then you play 20 games, which is 10 home, 10 away. And then the top 4 in each league play like in a quarter-final playoffs. So then we wouldn't start till probably October. I've heard that, whether that happens or not. But I think the main thing as well about non-league football is probably it survives on 2 things. Sponsorships. Businesses, when they go back to work, are they going to be really concerned about non-league football, the sport in the local team? They've probably got other prime concerns. And people through the door. It's a match day, you know, match day hospitality, match day, go to watch the game, having a pint, stand next to someone. If you haven't got them, that's me worry about it. So I think it's, if we get started before October, November, I'll be delighted. But I have these reservations about it.
Well, we certainly can hope so. But Nick, most importantly, look after yourself in the meantime, I think, and keep exercising, keep talking, keep getting out there. And like I say, I think we're all here. I can speak for, I don't want to speak for Mark, Darren and Olly, but I'm sure I am when I say that we're all here for you if you need us.
Appreciate it.
All right. Nick, take care of yourself. We'll catch you soon. Right?
Take care, Nick. Yeah,
That's brilliant. Nick Gray, manager of Morpeth Town, and I think most importantly, forget the football right there, like I just said. Being very, very brave, very, very courageous to come onto you know, an online platform like this and speak about what he's been through in the last few weeks. It's tremendous to hear that, boys, isn't it? like I mentioned before, in football, which is a typically macho sport, and Nick's one of the hardest blokes around in Northeast football, to hear him admit it and to hear him talk about what he's been through is refreshing, I suppose, in a way, if that's the right word, isn't it?
I had a bit of a wobble at the start of all this. I think I've put something on Twitter just saying I was having a rough few days, and Nick was one of the first people to get in touch with us, and I mean literally within minutes. You know, there was a few others as well who rang me or texted or sent tweets back, and it's just one of those. Everyone's kind of fighting their own battles throughout this, and it's such a unique situation. It's something nobody's ever been in before, so you've kind of got to be there for each other, and you know, people will need help. So a simple question: how are you doing? Is everything okay? Anything I can do? You know, what people have clearly asked Nick, and what I know for a fact Nick's asked other people. It is a case that we're just having to get through this together, rather than thinking you need to suffer on your own. You know, just be there.
That's one of the things. You know, you always think at that time you think you're on your own and you've got nobody to talk to. When I was in that place, you know, like I often say, I didn't come out. I was home, didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to talk to anybody, and you know, just hearing Nick there, it was quite painful too, because you can feel it in his voice as well, that it was a tough place where it was, and things were quite not like you should be, and you know. Look at it. He looks like he's on the other side, but yeah, it's very important, you know. Mental health.
How did you get out of that, Olly? Was it by speaking, by opening up a little bit more? Was it? I know Nick mentioned exercise. Obviously, you were playing at the time, but
it was my friends. So you know, friends and family that really you know, slapped me and told me to wake up. Because you know, there's a life after football. It's not all about football. But you know, deep down, you know, when I finished the game, you know, I was thinking, I've got no qualification. I'm 28. What am I going to do now? You know, what's there for me? And I couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
And it took me months and years to really come out on the other side, because you know, I thought I was done.
Yeah.
At one point, you know, I wanted to go back to France. I wanted to stay here. You know, there's loads, and the fact is, you've got a lot of time to yourself to think and make it waste, and that's where it is damaging.
It's a danger, isn't it?
And you need, and that's where I was very, very lucky to have, you know, partners and kids around messing about with you, so you kind of switch off. You know, you're in your own bubble, your own depression, but kids just want to go for a walk, so you go for the walk and you kind of, you know, forget about it. And then, but as soon as you're on your own, it's just come back at you, and then you know, you're dying inside.
Darren, did you go through anything like that when you finished your?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was fortunate. I got a bit of help from the PFA. You know, I had a guy who travelled up from London to meet up with me. You know, he put me in contact with a few people. I think the biggest thing for me was, you know, I was coming out of football. I was then going through a divorce.
Yeah.
I was then on my own for a bit because the kids were kind of not here. You know, but then, you know, fortunately, that's it. You know, you pull yourself through. But you know, I'm with Olly. You know, your head goes, you know, you're in a world of your own, to be honest. But you don't kind of show it on the outside. You know, I was still going to meet my mates. I was still going out, you know, still going having a pint with them. You don't show it. You know, you're laughing your joke, and then you come home and you're just like completely different. I think you know, Mark touched on it there. Like, you've got to get out there and you've got to put it out there. You know, and I don't mean it's not a sympathy cry or anything like that, but it's got to be taken seriously. You know, you don't realise how much of a hole you can go into, and it's very, very difficult to turn yourself around. And you know, I would say to anybody, you know, reach out, you know, touch out to someone, you know, whoever it is, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, I speak to people on numerous occasions on social media, privately, because obviously you've seen something they put on, or or they maybe messaged you, and you kind of talk to them, and and if it like we said, if it helps one person, then fantastic.
Exactly.
I think just to touch on something there, there's something me and Matthew Smith from If You Care Share talk about quite often, which is when someone puts something out on social media, they tend to get labelled as an attention seeker. Well,
Yeah.
I'd rather be an attention seeker and get the support that you need than whatever the other side of that is. It's it is attention seeking, but is that not a good thing rather than seen as a negative? That's kind of the way I would see that.
And that's what I think it's kind of permeated amongst, not just from you guys speaking about it, but Nick as well. And I think the phrase that keeps popping up for me is being on your own. You're not necessarily on your own, like Darren, you said, going out for drinks with your mates, etc. Olly, you were kind of shutting yourself away. Nick, obviously during lockdown. I know when I was kind of going through something, this is years ago now, but I used to shut myself away, and I wouldn't speak to anyone. You always felt like you were on your own, but the reality and the grim and the stark reality is that no one is ever on their own. They always have a voice in whatever way. They have communication. They will always have someone out there to listen. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, and it's the biggest killer of mental or bad mental health. That is talking, communicating, and being open about it. And it's almost like it's kryptonite. And I don't think that can be emphasized enough. It's the common denominator in the last 15, 20 minutes of talking about this. And I think it's been the common denominator of battling mental health in the last God knows how many years since someone was brave enough to come up and talk about it. So, yeah, it is refreshing to talk about it, I think, guys. And like we say again, for Nick to come on and talk about it in the manner that he did is absolutely tremendous from his point of view. And we obviously all wish him the very, very best. And for you three as well to talk openly about what you've been through is tremendous. So if there is anyone out there that is watching this and struggling, drop us a message, get in contact. I'm sure one of us will be more than happy to talk to you, if not all of us are more than happy to talk to you. So take care of yourselves and open up, talk about it. On a lighter note, I did say that we try and fit it within an hour tonight because Mark's going to get called in for his tea. But we're slightly over. So instead of running, we're going to run quite quickly through any of the business. And I mean very, very quickly with regards to this. The rest of the news in North East football. We'll start at Gateshead. There's been a bit of news around a club stalwart, Mark, in more ways than one, very quickly.
Yeah, a couple of things. Firstly, JJ O'Donnell is committed to a seventh season at the club. But on the other side, he's also, last season, scored 8 goals for Gateshead. Had an agreement with the Gateshead fan that they would donate £50 a goal to the Free Kicks Foundation, which provides football-based experiences for underprivileged children, ill children. So they've benefited £400 after JJ's best goal-scoring season of his career.
Amazing, that, isn't it? Like a bit of motivation.
Unbelievable. And he will want to point out as well that many of them were headers, so which is a bit different for a winger. But yeah, so well done to JJ, and great to see him staying. Not the only one either. There's been a few Gateshead players who've committed to the club. Greg Olly, which is a real coup, because for me, Greg is one of the best midfielders in non-league football. I don't even mean just the North East. I mean in non-league football. I think he's outstanding. So yeah, good start for the Heat. Good start to the summer.
A new side at Gateshead as well.
New women's team. The first ever ladies team. They've got a manager in place, Michael Gray. Not the Michael Gray that Darren will know, but Michael Gray, who used to coach East Durham ladies. So that launches next season. They are waiting for approval to join the Durham FA Development Division. But once that's given, Gateshead will have their first ever ladies team.
Fantastic! I can't wait to have Michael Gray on the show for Darren to chat to as well. After that, we will come on to that in a few months' time when Gateshead ladies actually start playing. But quickly on Spennymoor, another top player. We talked JJ O'Donnell at Gateshead. Glenn Taylor at Spennymoor hit 100 goals for the club, presented with a special commemorative shirt that he then signed. Well, there's been a development here. It was put up for auction to raise money for the club, and a consortium of around about 115 people, I think, Spennymoor fans, I imagine, won it with an astonishing total of £1,435. And their immediate response was they asked for it to be displayed in the sports bar. at Brewery Field, which is a lovely touch. That I think that's absolutely tremendous. Giving money back into the club, and obviously to want to spend him as top players certainly, but also longer serving players too. So tremendous from that front. Darlington as well, not to be outdone on the fundraising stakes. We've mentioned this every week. What's the total at now with Darlington and this crowdfunding?
I could be wrong, but I think they closed it today and they've raised £130,000.
Oh, heck.
Which is just ridiculous. Magnificent effort from Darlow, from the supporters. You know, it is a supporter-owned club, so well done to everyone involved there.
Fantastic. Well done to everyone at Darlington. I appreciate we've had to race through any other business. Like I say, Mark is being threatened with pain of death if he doesn't get off this Football Matters programme tonight by any stretch. And having met his wife numerous times, there is no way in heck that I'm going up against Jacqueline Carruthers. Not a chance. So we're going to move on to Team of the Week. Last week, very little controversy apart from one thing, and that was me putting you, Daz, in at left back.
Mate, I can just play anywhere, mate.
You're never too old to learn a new position, mate.
Mate, I played left back.
There you go, mate. Fine.
The only place I haven't played is in goal.
Well, this week, funny as shit.
I put you in goal this week.
He is. Already in there. This week, we actually have a new one because it's an intriguing one. English players who have never played or never been called up and then played for England. Now, they could have been called up, like I say, but they've never actually got out onto the pitch. So who was never free for the Three Lions? That's difficult to say after a few cans. Luckily, I've been kept sober today. Who may have got the call up but never got the full nod? And who could have been good enough for the bench but not enough for the pitch? Daz, sorry, you're not on my list this week, unfortunately. Not even in goal, sadly.
Sure.
So, sorry. Next week, maybe. We'll see. Let's get quickly through it then. Daz, let's start with you. What formation are we going with, by the way?
I've gone 4-3-3.
3-5-1.
What have you gone for, Ollie?
3-5-1.
3-5-1 again? Have you got another player sent off?
I couldn't find fullbacks.
A 3-5-1 for Ollie. That'll be interesting. Daz,
I've got 4-4-2, but I can adapt if you want.
4-4-2. What
It's okay. I've got 4-4-2.
4-4-2. Are we going to go 4-4-2? Oh, sorry, Mark. Sorry,
That's all right. I can adapt as well.
Exactly. Who have we got in goal? Darren, let's go in goal for you, not necessarily you.
Well, I've gone old school on this one, and I've gone Tony Corton.
It's going back, isn't it? Okay, all right, that's a good shout. Have we got any advances on Tony?
I went with, I was going to go with Steve Harper, who he's played in the Premier League for a long time, not really a chance with England. But I've actually gone with Kevin Pressman, who played for Sheffield Wednesday in the 90s, very good keeper. Probably a victim of how many good English keepers there were in the 90s. I've gone with him.
Massive as well, I seem to remember.
I like to go with people I've met or have played against. So for me, it was Harps.
Stephen Harper. It's a good shout, that, actually.
3 different keepers for you there.
That's going to be
It's going to be an awkward one, this one, I feel.
Is every week, mate. Every week we get some abuse on media for it, so we're used to it by now. We just like to court it instead. Let's go to defenders. Ollie, who have you got across a back four? You can give me.
So my back four would be Stephen Taylor, right back, Steve Bruce, and then right on the left, and Steve Bruce and Paul Davis.
Paul Davis as well. That's a good back four, that, you know. That's a really
decent, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really, really good. Okay. Darren, any advances on? That's happening eventually, mate. You do the prep, you get the results. It's amazing.
That's it.
I've gone with the adaptable Dominic Matteo right back.
Oh, yeah.
I've gone with Steve Bruce, same as Ollie.
Brilliant.
I've gone with Curtis Davis.
Yeah.
And I've gone with Alan Wright.
Lovely.
Curtis Davies, sorry.
Pretty strong. I think we've got Bruce and Wright in immediately. Mark, have you got any changes on that?
Yeah, I've got Bruce and Wright in mine as well. Steve Watson at right back. Played England 21s for a long time. But spent the vast majority of his career in the Premier League as well. Newcastle, Everton, Villa. And then David May David May as well, Premier League winner. But I don't believe got an England cap.
No.
Most well remembered for getting right in front of the 1999 Champions League.
Champions League winner as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very, very good defender as well back in the day. Okay, that's some good names kicking round here. Really good names. Midfield. Darren, let's go with you for your midfielders. 4 across.
Pennant.
Jermaine Pennant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good
Jack
call.
Colback.
What was that one?
Like Jack Colback, obviously, he's a bit more recent, but
Colback.
Jimmy Bullard
Oh, the Bulldog. All right.
and David Thompson.
Yeah.
That's a really good shout.
I think Thompson and Bullard got called up, didn't they? But they didn't actually get any game time.
Yeah, I got no game time at all.
Which gives them additional, because it sounds really harsh to say that, but I quite like the fact that they got called up but didn't get game time off the back of it. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That is really harsh.
It is really harsh. Sorry, Jimmy. Sorry, David. Really, really sorry. But, if you're watching this, which I highly doubt. Olly, what have we gone for midfield?
So Pennant as well.
2 votes.
Bullard, Kevin Nolan,
Mm.
and Colback.
Colback. I never thought of Jack Colback, weirdly enough. Mark, anyone for that?
I thought about Jack Colback, and then I thought no. Only because I think I've got 4 better midfielders. So I've got Pennant. I've got Nolan. Kevin Nolan. Lee Clark. I've got.
Lucky.
And Mark Noble.
Mm.
Noble. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
decent.
Been excellent for West Ham for how long now? 10 years and
Yeah.
never had a call up. I just find that. But I must say, I think Nolan has to be in because not just when he was at Newcastle, when he went through that spell at Bolton, when he was scoring week in, week out, he deserved a call up.
Scoring
Very
over 6 week in, week out, I seem to remember as well.
Yeah.
There's some big names in that. The midfield, I think, is going to be quite easy to choose. What about the forwards? Where are we going with this? Mark, let's go with you first for forwards.
Well, I've got a player who was really unlucky not to go to the World Cup in 2002 because he got a bad injury, which was Matt Jansen. Absolutely outstanding at Blackburn, at Palace, at Carlisle, where he started out.
Yeah.
And alongside him, someone again who scored regularly in the Premier League with Arsenal, with Everton, with Forest, I think, with Kevin Campbell.
Yeah.
Good shout as well. I like that. Right. Darren, any advance?
Yeah. Mark, exactly the same as Mark.
Exactly the same?
Kevin Campbell.
I swear you two do your homework together.
Who copies off who, though?
What?
Who copies off who?
Me. Everybody copy of me.
Olly, nobody's ever copied off you, mate.
Trust me, you did.
People were waiting.
You didn't have Kevin Nolan, and you just added up. You made it up, didn't it?
People were waiting to copy off you at school, mate, but you were
honestly. Next time I go last.
Right. Okay. You called it, mate. You called it. Who have you got up front, mate?
I've got Kevin Campbell, and I couldn't find a second striker that I know that was good enough to go on it. So he was a lone striker.
He would have done a decent job as a lone striker as well, I imagine.
There we go.
Darren, last but not least.
Yeah, I've got the same as Mark.
You've gone the same as Mark. Sorry, I'm getting
come on, Daz. Come on. Do your work at home. Come on.
I did have is it Sergio Barino?
Barino.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Would you have picked him if he hadn't gone through one of the worst goal droughts in history?
I wouldn't have picked him anyway.
Okay.
Can I just throw something in as well?
Yes.
I know we weren't asked to pick managers, but Brian Clough.
Well, I went for Ricky Tomlinson, but okay.
He was England manager. So what are you on about?
Darren, manager, any shouts?
God.
Next week if you want.
Yeah, I'll have a think about that one, mate.
We'll go with Brian Clough as a manager. All right. Yeah.
Peter Reid.
Just that'll do. Fine. Aye. Right. Okay. Well, we'll have a look at that over the next 24 hours or so, and we'll get a team up onto social media. it'll be a pretty decent team looking at all those names down. Do let us know your thoughts. Keep them civil. We live in a nice world, don't we? Or don't.
Are we?
There's no mean tweets this week, Olly, as well, unfortunately.
I know.
Kept that away. As ever, that wraps us all up for another episode. Sorry, Mark, you're going to get in trouble. It is 10 minutes overtime at least. Sorry about that. Are you going to get... No, you're all right. It was your fault, in fairness. You were banging on about that team of the week this week.
Just move on.
Tell you what, let us, before you do head off for your turkey twizzlers or whatever you're having for tea, let us know about this week's quiz.
It's not even for tea either. That's the worst thing. It's work. Yes, this week. I haven't actually thought about it, but yeah, the quiz Thursday night. It is going to be a World Cup one, and because I've just been put in the spot, it'll be the Brazil World Cup in whenever that was.
Okay.
2014. yeah, 2014. I should know it because it was the year my son was born. So yes, 2014. So.
Shall we move quickly on from that then?
Very quick.
8 on Thursday evening. Football Matters quiz, Brazil 2014 World Cup. There you go, in a nutshell. As ever, we are on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Give us a share, a like. We are now on a podcast as well, as a podcast on SoundCloud, on Anna, and on iTunes. So listen to us while you're in the car or out in your daily exercise. Thanks as ever to our guests, to Vicki Sparks and to Nick Gray, of course. Gents, thanks as ever for your guidance, opinions, etc. Top notch as always. Brilliant stuff. We'll see you in 7 days. And thanks to you, as ever, for watching as well. As we move a week closer to the return of football in England, health continues to be the priority. But isn't it good that football is starting to matter once again? From me, Andy Sixsmith, from all of us here at Football Matters, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye for now.